Hey everybody, welcome to PDQ Live. We're here for Security Awareness Month, so we brought in our security expert and Josh.
Oh, yes.
Dang.
And
Josh.
fair.
Fair.
What did you say you were yesterday to Rachel? You were the security blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm here today. I'm a
like
security
it.
blanket.
Oh, you're the okay. Yeah. Well, see, I wasn't here. I was on Zoom watching you guys try to get the lights to work.
No, we never have technical problems here at PDQ.
Sorry.
You hush. It was fine. It was fine.
Me and JJ just hanging out. Like,
Hey, let's talk phishing and smishing.
okay, sorry. Yes, we won't talk about technical failures.
Okay, so it was good timing because October is Cybersecurity Month, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what it is?
Yes, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
It's a spooky
I look at
month.
you. I'm like, is that what it is?
I guess so.
All right, so we have a pretty good use case to talk about, which is the MGM hack, right?
Yeah, which isn't even like the hottest news right now, which is crazy.
There's a
We're
lot going
behind.
on.
We're behind. What's the hottest news?
Well, I mean, we've got Apple 0 day, we've got
Yeah.
Confluence 0 day, we've got LibWebP.
Well, I also
Whatever.
read that Caesars got hacked and paid
Caesars?
the ransom.
I bet they did.
So as far as I could tell, I read about it. The MGM, it cost them $80 million, and then $250 million if you count lost revenue
Yeah.
for 10 days.
Yeah. That's
10
a
days.
big deal for a casino.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
I mean, because, I don't know how much time you spend in Vegas, but, you go there and it's 24/7. People are there gambling. So 10 days is
yeah.
a really big deal.
Well, it was actually kind of interesting to me the way that they attacked it. So a couple things. The hackers were 17 years old. That's
Very
terrifying.
impressive.
Yeah. So their name is, I put it down here, Scattered Spiders. A bunch of youngsters.
Yeah, that sounds like a name 17-year-olds would
I know,
come
right?
up with.
And the way they did it was through Phishing, believe it or not. And they hacked the help desk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I found this to be terrifying. So I wanted to kind of talk through that and maybe set this up as a conversation piece. So how do we avoid this happening in our environments? And so I know you're big on the MITRE framework. So
Yeah.
let me just give you a little more detail and then you can elaborate. So what they did is they called the help desk and they said, hey, I'm Rachel. I lost my phone and I forgot my credentials because I'm just so dumb. Can you tell me my credentials? And, oh yeah, I left my phone at home. Can you help me by resetting my password? And they said, okay, we sure will. Mm-hmm. So they were actually able to bypass MFA and got them in. And so then they got in.
Yeah.
And then there was a whole Okta component where they sat in the Okta database and sat and harvested credentials. Mm-hmm. And at one point, they knew they were there, and they actually tried to stop them. And the hackers went on and said, that was a mistake. And they did all this nefarious posting. I mean, it's really creepy if you read about it.
Well, didn't they try to fix it, but they locked themselves out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's imagine that nightmare scenario and maybe talk us through how we could not have that happen to us and start at the beginning.
Yeah, I think the real, I say this all the time when I talk about cybersecurity is you could have the Fort Knox of networks and security and just like the strongest security system, but your people are your weakest link, right? Without proper training, they don't know to look out for that sort of thing. And I think, I do have to give those help desk people some grace because as many help desk people know, or people who've been help desk, you want to help people. You want to be helpful. Like somebody, who locks themselves out, they have a job to do as well. And that's very important to them.
But before, the important part of that is every place like that is going to have processes. Did they follow all of the defined processes and then it happened, or did they step outside process to do it? Because that's very different.
Yeah, or do they even have processes in place that they should have had? Right? Those are the kind of things that you can do. You can do training, you can have processes and stuff like that. Could they have had better processes?
Yeah.
Apparently so.
Well, that brings up the good question. So social engineering, let's talk about that. So there's phishing, smishing, vishing, right? So what are the differences in all those?
Well, phishing is voice phishing, right? So that's going to be kind of the way I think of it, of like classic social engineering of calling up. I mean, it's what Kevin Mitnick really made himself famous doing was over phone, doing phishing and that sort of thing. And it's very successful because it's much easier to manipulate and to have those emotions, right? I mean, there's a lot of, I've been to Black Hat and their social engineering village and watching people go through that live and use all those tactics, the crying baby, that sort of thing to really get emotions playing.
Yeah, like, help me, I need it, help me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is my job. Like, I'm going to get fired if you don't help me. It's this sense of urgency. And, you have phishing, right, which is just your email that comes in. And those can be really just like, attackers are just spreading those out, right? They're not targeted, but you get a phishing, to be, and enunciate correctly, but you get a phishing call, and that's targeted.
Yeah.
That's somebody who's taken the time to find out everything they could about your company processes and your company and you as a person and all these things. That's really hard to defend against.
It is. So here's the horrifying details, and Josh and I had a discussion about this. So built in Microsoft Authenticator, there isn't a way to do a push notification. So if Jordan calls and says, I'm Jordan, and really I lost my phone, I need you to reset it, I have no way to say, I'm going to send you an Authenticator push and tell me the code. You can't. So that's terrifying. What I can do is I can say, Jordan, I'm going to call you on the phone number that I have in 365 and you tell me the code. So I could do that, or I could say, I'm sorry, I just misspoke. I can't do that. I can say, I'm going to call you on the phone and say, Jordan, is this you? But he could then say, I lost the phone. That's why I'm calling you. I need the phone. So he could counter and say that. So I can either say, I can hold strong and say, no, sorry, these are the rules. I can't do it. That would be what I could do. But if I have enabled Duo in my environment, Duo does allow you to send a push. So I could say that. And if they don't have the option, my choice is to be a real jerk and go, nope, you can't do it. Right?
So, but that's where process comes in, because there should be a scenario where there's some sort of identifiable information that's unique to that person that the help desk can ask, and if they don't get the right answer, then they just say no.
Safe words.
Yes, safe words, or
pins, passcodes.
Pins, or even you don't want to use personal data, because if they're getting to the point where they're targeted like that, they probably have done the research on who they're pretending to be.
Yeah.
But
Could be.
There should be some sort of code or word there. If they have all of that, we need this. They have to be able to do something that identifies that they are them. And without that, it should be a flat no. It's not being a jerk. That's not letting someone take over your casino.
Yeah, I think another option here might be something asking time-specific company internal data, right? So if I'm an attacker, I can gather all kinds of stuff about a company and about the company culture and about processes and things that are happening. But there's usually a time delay from when that's made public to when it actually happened. So if I can talk to you about, hey, did you see that post in Random yesterday about blah, 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 blah?
Ooh, that's true. That's good.
Right? That's company specific. That's internal only. And it's a way to validate someone is who they say they are without having to have some formal process of like a PIN, a safe word, all of that.
Well, you also said, I'm going to call your boss.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
right? Like,
that was a good one.
Everything else fails. Okay, fine. I don't know what let's call somebody on your team.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to add another layer on here. They also practiced SIM swapping. What do you do in that scenario? So can you explain what SIM swapping is, just in case anyone doesn't know, because that's extra tricky.
Yeah, I mean, SIM swapping is a form of attack where an attacker will call up your mobile phone provider, whoever, T-Mobile, Sprint, I guess they're the same thing now, but Verizon, whichever it may be. And they have that same sob story, right? Oh, I've lost this, blah, blah, blah. I've got a new phone. I need to switch over. And a lot of these companies don't have good processes for verifying that person is who they say they are. And so it's quite easy then to say, hey, I've got, this is who I am. This is my new phone. And you just take over their SIM information. Yeah. Now, of course, the person that this is happening to is going to know pretty soon, because now all of a sudden their phone's not working.
Yeah. And with eSIMs, very easy to switch it over now. They're not physical cards, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But it still worked with physical cards because you still had a physical SIM and you could give those details, right?
Right.
But you're basically stealing that phone number out from under somebody. Right. And that's why I generally discourage MFA using text because it's a lot easier than I think we.
What do you think about phone calls? What do you guys think about phone calls? Would you allow that for MFA?
Maybe.
Depends.
I mean, but you still kind of come into the same issue with SIM swapping. Sorry,
Okay.
that's a tongue twister.
So maybe phone calls. You don't like texts.
No, I don't. I don't really like the phone calls either because I don't want to answer the phone when I'm just trying to log in.
Okay. For sure MFA, right?
Oh,
Okay.
well, yes. I mean,
Absolutely MFA.
yeah, because we've seen it ourselves. Credentials, you in good faith go to a website, and it could be somebody who is pretty secure and just makes a mistake one day and puts in their information. And usually those attackers are really fast.
Yeah.
They'll automatically try to log in, but if they don't have that MFA info, even though they have your password, they don't get in.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really good way of protecting your account.
Yeah.
That's why MFA is so important these days.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about biometrics? I'm so sorry.
Well, as you say, TV sets the expectation when you're watching hacking on
Yeah.
the TV that it's an instant thing. When
No.
really, that's the reason why Lapse is so effective is because it rotates every couple of days.
Yeah.
And that's fast enough that hackers can't do much with it.
Yeah.
So it's not it's rarely someone sitting at the thing and actively doing everything. As they get the information, sit on it, they do stuff with it. So it's not so it's never going to be rapid. So I think the need for instant response is often overblown. Not in the case of like
Yeah.
two-factor and things like that, but
Well, I mean, okay, let's say you put your credentials into some credential harvesting website and they immediately try to log in to, your Microsoft account and they get blocked by MFA. Well, they know that you have an account here, here, and here. Maybe you're using the same password.
not reusing credentials is
That's a huge
that's
one.
the big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, because for me, when I'm responding to an incident like that, and I go, okay, you put your credentials in, like it's fine, you're gonna be fine. Have you used it anywhere else? Like that is
Yeah.
the most important thing that you cannot lie to me about. Because if you used it somewhere else, then I have to go to those systems and see what's happened. I need to get all that data, and I can help you, and I want to help you, but you have to be honest with me. And that's, in the first place, don't reuse passwords. But if you have, be honest with it when you're talking to your security people.
If I've learned nothing from House, everybody lies.
True.
Okay, so let's talk about 365 for a second because there's ways that we can set this up to tell us, hopefully, in most cases when this is happening, right? So risky sign-in. So we're going to do that through conditional access policies, right?
Yeah. Well, audit logging in general.
Audit logging, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to take a look at these or just kind of show them. We can kind of decide, but so there's different things inside of 365 that we can set up. So if we start with MFA, there's authentication methods, and we talked a little bit about that. I talked about the limitations of Microsoft Authenticator and kind of more I'm going to say a little better approach with Duo in that you can send the push notifications if there is an incident. I kind of prefer that. And then, so that's where we would set up right here, where we're going to send them. I'm really actually loving these hardware tokens that Josh just told me about this week. And then I started researching them. So I actually want to just show it because I'm in love with these now. So Josh, can you talk us through these just a little bit? Because these are my favorite things in the whole world now.
Me talking.
I mean, I could talk about
Or
the YubiKeys
Rachel, yes,
if you
sorry,
want,
Rachel, talk about them. Yeah.
usually the thing is me going to Josh and saying,
Yes,
I have
Rachel,
money for
tell us.
YubiKeys, and he's like,
for it.
yeah. I mean, you have different kinds of versions of hardware tokens. You've got your YubiKey, which is kind of classic, like famous for a reason because it's so easy to use. You plug it in and you touch it.
Yeah.
And it gives you a time-based and also like user-based token that it then enters as a one-time password.
So
right?
this is time-based cryptography. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know like a lot of the specifics behind exactly how it works, but yes, I would assume that, that it is time-based. And time-based is really good because of what we mentioned earlier, which is it doesn't give attackers a lot of time to then use that, right? So let's say somehow they intercept something and they get your one-time password. Well, that only lasts for 30 seconds. They have to be 30 seconds, right? Or 60 seconds or however long it lasts. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of YubiKeys and using those because there's so many different things that they support. They're very versatile. Some of them are NFC, some of them are just little tiny, and so they don't break off in your computer, which is a big
It looks just like a receiver, right? It just looks like a mouse receiver. I put it in my laptop.
Sometimes I accidentally touch mine and send a one-time password in Slack.
Yes, I've done that. You know, well, because when you touch it, it puts in the password and then hits enter. Like it has, so you just touch it and it goes.
I have a couple questions, and I actually, someone just asked this. What happens if they leave it at home, and how does it integrate with MFA for everything? Talk us through that. How does it work exactly?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the fatal flaw of that technology, and I think why people like duo pushes or texts or whatever, because they always have their phone with them. You know, losing your phone is pretty rare these days, I would hope. But yeah, you have a YubiKey, and it's a small little USB drive. You ever lost a USB drive, you know how easy it is. So, you know, combating that is hard. It's like a personal responsibility thing, and if you lose it,
We hate that.
I know. That's why, like, you always have multiple options, right? When I set up MFA, I always give myself multiple options.
Right.
I have a duo push, I have YubiKey, I have these different things.
So this is one of multiple options that we set up.
It is, right? And it's like this risk assessment for the service or data you're trying to protect, right? If I have a app for a movie theater and I'm buying movie theater tickets, I'm going to use an SMS because I don't really care.
Yeah.
Right.
And that might only be their option, like the only option.
If it's I want to upload a package to the PU package library, it's not that. Right. It's going to be something very drastically different that is user-based, time-based, hardware token-based.
Multiple people, you know, a good process.
So it depends. So you make that assessment at the time that you're implementing MFA for that service.
Yeah.
Right. In most cases, it's like here's like a push or a TOTP device, whether that's your phone or dual push it, or it's a hardware key, or maybe it's a combination of both.
So risk ratio scenario for all of these different types of things. That makes sense. Okay.
I mean, that's the biggest thing about cybersecurity is it all boils down to risk. How much risk are you willing to accept?
Okay. So that's a good segue, actually. So hardware tokens, another option for MFA. So we can do the same thing with averting risk in 365 for VPN, right? We can see the traffic. We can say where the users are allowed to log in and numerous other things with the conditional access policies inside of Azure. Just another extra layer.
I think they exist in most major IDPs is this concept of conditional access. And I think Timothy calls us out in the chat that it is like either your best friend or your worst enemy. And that is 100% true. Because from a cybersecurity perspective, I can set all of these policies. You must meet this criteria, whatever you want, mix and match. Whether it's a trusted network location, you know, forcing VPN access, or up-to-date antivirus, something like that.
Yeah, device conditions.
But at the same time, you doing that makes that help desk employee's job a lot harder.
Well, it makes it harder for everyone.
Yeah, it does. But
right, so it is. It's a risk. You know, it always boils down to that, just like Rachel said.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the biggest challenge in cybersecurity is, do I want my workflow to be easy? Yes. But I also want it to be secure. So there's certain gives and takes that I have to give. And I think people, regular users are just going about their regular day, and then security bursts in and is saying, okay, you have to change all these things. And it's really annoying. And we understand that. We're sympathetic because we're also using these systems. So, we don't do, at least in our department, we don't do anything lightly without talking, because sometimes I come up with ideas and I'm really excited about something and I go tell Josh and he's like, yes, but have you considered?
You have to consider all those.
Yeah, it goes back to the very classic example of a password, right? So once upon a time, everyone was like, okay, you will have 12 characters. It won't contain this, or this. It'll have all these special characters. Oh, and by the way, it expires every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The natural human response to that, what happens is humans are creatures of habit. We look at desire paths, for example. What happens is in that institution, under every keyboard is a Post-it note with a password.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
So the more intense the process of all of the security is, the more likely your users are going to actively work to bypass it.
Exactly.
You basically, you're setting your user base to undermine your security.
Exactly.
Yes. So that's why you make it easy with options like MF, or, when you're talking about MFA with texting, right? Texting is a really easy thing for people. Is it secure? Not really.
Yeah.
But it's better than nothing,
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
you know?
So
James D has a great comment
Yeah.
about that. If you make something so secure it's too hard to use, employees will bypass your security because it's too much of a pain. It's a balancing act.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say really quick, 'cause we talked about a bunch about this. Kelly has included guides to set up the conditional access policies inside of Azure and a variety of other things. Everything we're talking about today, we have guides on how to do it. But I do want to circle back just really quick. So can we talk a little bit about reasons to set up single sign-on as it relates to security?
Yeah, I mean, it makes password management so much easier. You know, there's a lot of kind of give and take with SSO, you know, itself, because inherently you're signing into multiple systems with one set of credentials. And that's why when you're setting up SSO using, you know, let's say Office 365, for example, it's really important to secure those systems and to have those processes in place, because if you're going to be using SSO, it is really nice and it is more, in my opinion, more secure and a really good best practice. I enable SSO whenever I can. But, you know, like, if your users aren't being secure, you don't have MFA set up or whatever, then you're just, that defeats the purpose altogether.
Yeah. The other thing here is it reduces your attack surface
Yes.
substantially,
Yeah.
right? If same thing, humans are creatures of habit. I'm going to reuse a password. It happens. We all say, don't do it. It happens.
Yeah.
So if I am, you know, using SSO to sign into an app or a service, I'm not actually giving them my password. I'm giving them a token for that service. And so if that service over here does a insert company here that decides to lose passwords every year on average,
Yeah.
then they don't actually have my password. They have a token that's expired. And so I don't have to be constantly watching the breach list of where my password's exposed.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm watching it for like 1 or 2 services.
yeah, I mean, I mentioned like the sprawl of security can be very large. And if I'm looking at 10 different systems with 10 different logins, that's 10 different audit log sources that I have to monitor. That's not always easy to monitor.
No.
So if I'm using SSO, I'm monitoring one audit log for 10 different applications.
Yeah,
And it's
much easier.
Yeah, much easier.
No, that makes perfect sense.
That right there is why more and more PowerShell is no longer being viewed as a security vulnerability, but a security strength, just because the logging is so controlled. If they're in there, that means they're already in your network through other things. So having PowerShell available makes it easier for you to track what's happened rather than they're just in there, you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So logging is important, especially where you can have it controlled and centralized.
Yeah. How about password managers?
Oh, love them. Love them. I cannot tell you how often in just regular life I get upset at my friends. I'm like, why don't you have a password manager? What do you mean you're saving your password in the browser? What is this? 2015?
So, but in the case of like I know OnePass, I believe, uses the Web Live that was part of the 0 day.
Yeah.
So those are great, but if you have something like that, then it's not one thing's at risk. It's everything.
Again, it's that risk appetite, right? You know, it's really, I mean, you can do your research into password managers, but typically how they protect themselves is those vaults are, they're encrypted. And so they may suffer a breach. I think LastPass or I can't remember exactly the
LastPass had
scenario.
a couple. And
They had
where
a couple
they
of
weren't
breach.
encrypting some private information, like the description field.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, and you hear about these breaches, and you know, there's also like your grandma has a notebook where she keeps all her passwords. I love that actually, because what is the chance that an attacker is going to go into her house and steal all her stuff? She has her own password manager in a notebook. It's great. I don't have anything against that.
That's how my wife does it.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I wouldn't.
It's in her sewing kit too. So, hey, last thing I don't mean to stop you, but we're getting close to time.
And we do have some questions.
Okay. The last thing that was highly suggested was setting up self-service password reset in 365, because this would have helped in this breach on MGM, because the help desk could have said, sorry, this protocol, go reset it yourself.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about that? Yes to that?
I think it's a good layer.
Good layer.
It's another
I think
layer.
again, it's all about processes and making sure that your customer facing, whether it's internal or external, that they have good playbooks and processes they can follow. I worked in tech support, and it was for a cybersecurity company, and we had major guidelines, mostly for compliance and legal reasons, but we had major guidelines of this is what you could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
And it made customers very frustrated at times because they wanted easy access. They're like, I'm the user. Like, why can't you just simply give me access?
We were talking process earlier. I think that you're doing a favor to the help desk, not a disservice, because it does make it more difficult for them. But they're new to IT, generally speaking, and they're learning the ropes. Giving them a very defined process of, in these situations, this is what you do, removes the burden of that decision from them where they're probably not ready yet.
Yeah. Tara, we were talking about this. Okay, so someone pretends to be the CEO, right? Breathing down, brand new to the help desk. Do this.
Yeah.
If that person doesn't have that policy to fall back on, they're probably going to get manipulated.
Yeah, I was telling Josh that I could break his help desk team. He was like, no, you can't. I was like, I can Karen it right up. And he was saying I couldn't. But I think you have to have these discussions with your team, too. Open up that discussion and say, here are our policies. And maybe even practice it. Try and make them cry, right? Just get it out there.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the good communication of what those processes are, and that they can say, hey, like, here's what I'm allowed to do. I'm not willing to risk my job for it, even though you're the CEO and you're saying that, that you're going to fire me, whatever.
Saying, sorry, that's policy was the most empowered thing that I have. Because it was, at that point, it's not a discussion they have with me.
They have it with somebody higher up that they have easier access to. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and we're assuming, I mean, at least I was assuming when I first started this research, is that I know everybody that works here. No, what if you work for a team of 10,000? You don't know everybody.
Yeah.
So,
all right, well, let's, we have quite a few questions.
We've got a few. All right, let's start with a question from Jeff P. Any tricks or ideas for a company that can't afford or won't spend the money on P1 licenses to enable conditional access policies for all 300 users? MFA implemented, but people still suck. It's true.
So you have group policy, right? Some of the you can do you can do some of it in group policy, not all of it. Laps for some things, but that's not going to help in a lot of these.
I think MFA is really like your biggest safeguard there.
Yeah, MFA and define some audit logs.
So, and they said not for all 300 users. Can you define the users that you know have more access and then enable those type of things for those users, while the lower risk users that have less access maybe don't need.
Well, you can. So this is the annoying part about Microsoft. If you want to just annoy yourself, spend a week in Microsoft looking around where everything is. So multi-factor is like in 5 different places. So the best place to do it is in conditional access because you can do a policy for all users. You can, in fact, pull up multi-factor in the user admin portal, and you can go enable for all. But crappy part about doing it that way, and I don't think you need the license that he's referring to. So you enable it for all, and then per user, you would set up the MFA type.
So you think
crappy,
the P1 gives them a general board where it's easy to do across the board. Without P1, they can do it on an individual basis?
I know you can.
It's more setup.
As long as you, the administrator, have, I think you have to have an E3.
And at that point, a fun discussion is take the value of your time and what you're spending, keeping that maintained, and
I know.
see if that's more or less than the P1
I didn't say it was a great way. I just, you can do it that way.
Well, I think that's actually more of like a business process question because it is that question of how much time and resources is this going to take for me to set it up with this license? And if you take that and you compare it to how much the license that you do need costs, and you can bring that to the business and say, here this is.
It depends on how many users. Everything is a use case. What does your environment look like?
In that case, for the 300, I would say document how much it would take to individually handle if you're looking to do that, and go with that because everyone's going to respond to money.
That's true.
You pay me X amount, it's going to cost this much of my time per week ongoing, or the license is this. And if one number is greater than the other, money talks.
My last position, I'm not joking. I went in and none of it was turned on. I was like, enable all users. And then I just waited for them all to come to my office. I'm like, let's set this up. And I did it one by one, literally. So you definitely can do it that way. It's not the best way, but you can.
Cool. All right. Our next question it's a 2-parter. So let's do part one. I'm hearing a lot of chatter about CVE, blah, blah, nerd, and that the WebM vulnerabilities are impacting more than just Chrome, but impacts things like Edge, Slack, Teams, Photoshop, etc. I can't seem to find comprehensive lists of vulnerable apps and what the patched version is. Any insights? It would make a great blog post.
Yes, I don't have a browser in front of me, so I can't tell you what's on that list, but I know there is a list.
Yeah, but it can't be all-encompassing because the issue with this is it's not product-specific. It's a commonly used library that people are using.
Yeah.
So with Log4j, which is a similar thing that happened a while ago, I wrote the blog on that one, and I wrote PowerShell that basically scanned everything looking for that library. And if I found it, it'd report back to you.
Yeah.
So to track this one down, you need to find out what the name of that version of the library is or that it's looking for. And it's not just scan one location. You have to scan every piece of software. Because every software that uses that library is vulnerable. And if they're not self-reporting, they might not make it to the list. So, and that scan's not fast because you're scanning everything. But if you're really worried about it, you find the name of the library, you do a quick PowerShell scan that says looking for this file recursively, and it will report back.
Yeah, PowerShell is a really great option for that. I also think if you are using a vulnerability management software like Qualys Tenable, you can set up a filter rule and say, show me all of the things that have the CVE. That's what I did. I just ran, it took me 2 seconds to run a query against all my vulnerabilities and all my software and say, here's the CVE that I'm looking for. Show me everything that has it. And then that's a really easy report that I can just give over to IT and say, hey, here's what you need to fix. Same with our cloud team, as I can scan using our cloud scanner and find it. So yeah, PowerShell or vulnerability scanner, either way.
If you know the name of the library, which they should be published, we can. It's as easy as scanning for that, and it might show up 7 times on a computer because 7 applications use it.
Okay. We have, speaking of PowerShell, we have a question kind of for Jordan. How difficult is it to enable BitLocker with PDQ? I assume Jordan has some PowerShell magic already out there. Sincerely, Doug K.
So BitLocker is one that I have never dealt with myself. I do believe that there is a module that someone built around BitLocker that gives you just direct commandlets that you can use to set that up, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, one thing that I would caution about that as well is having your key, your BitLocker key, your recovery key, because if that gets lost, you're kind of screwed.
So if you are going to do it with PowerShell, it's going to print out the key for you and make sure you're really documenting where that is and back up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm confident. I know there is a module pre-built for it. I just don't know enough about it to really dive into specifics.
So Josh, CM says conditional access requires a POM license for every user. Does that affect the MFA and the user? See, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't think it did.
I think there's the conflating MFA and conditional access.
That's what I thought.
They're separated things. Yeah. And I think they're actually right.
Okay.
That with a basic license, you cannot do granular conditional access.
Yeah, but
you have to have
isn't MFA separate in the user admin? Okay,
that's just included. MFA is just included. Conditional access is the here, pay us more money.
Right. Okay.
Real quick, the chat came through with the PowerShell right there. Enable -BitLocker, and then there's a parameter for mount point where you set where it's going. And he set the C drive, skip hardware test, and recovery password. So it really is a PowerShell module where everything you're looking for is in there as a parameter already. So it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Boom.
Just make sure you back up those keys.
Yeah, exactly. We had a problem with that recently.
No.
Oh, sorry, we did not.
No, we have no problems here. What? No. Come on.
All right. Any final parting words? Thoughts?
Security is the worst until it's mis-set up and it causes you more problems.
Yeah, that is true.
Agree.
But it's the best. So awesome.
It is the worst until you've done it wrong. Then it's like, oh, if only I'd appreciated it.
Yes.
That's true.
Or until you give your credentials over to a credential harvester and your security team has to sweep in and save the day.
Let's just put them in chat.
Yeah. It's easier.
Why not?
Thanks for joining us for PDQ. I'm Jordan.
I'm Tara.
And thanks for joining us, Rachel and Josh.
There you go. Thanks for joining the webcast today. And if you like what you've seen, do us a favor, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave us your comments, your questions, your suggestions, whatever. We like it all. And join us on Discord. We'd love to see you there. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.